Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new video, but it's not a Marvel's Avengers video, it's not a Star Wars video, it's not anything from DC Fandom from the last couple days, it's not even a Harry Potter news video, it is in fact a Lord of the Rings video, and more specifically, the new game that is coming out for the next generation of consoles called Lord of the Rings Gollum. Today we got a teaser trailer for it and I've put that up on the channel already, so if you want to see it with the audio, go and check it out on the channel. If not, you can see it, and 11 new screenshots of the game. IGN were given the exclusive article where they had an interview with the game's developers talking about the mixture of stealth and action and how it's an interactive narrative. You're going to be able to choose, within limitations, how you would like to play as Gollum or more like Smeagol. There are two clearly distinct states that you will be playing in. One is either stealthily making your way past various threats, so imagine lots of orcs and Uruk-hai, as you make your way across Mordor, and you'll also be making narrative choices as the warring personalities, as I said, of Smeagol and Gollum, because as one of the images shows, you will be able to choose how Gollum acts, and I'm going to just refer to him as Gollum unless I'm being really specific, because you'll be able to choose if he acts more like Gollum or if he acts more like Smeagol. The game mixes stealth with vertical climbing parkour, and they compare it here to Prince of Persia because it is mostly a non-combat game, but Gollum will be able to stealthily take out enemies. There's not going to be a situation like in Shadow of Mordor where you get surrounded by about 10 different orcs, some more powerful than others, and you're going to fight your way out of it. Gollum is not going to survive against maybe 2 of them in a one-on-one fight, let alone 10, so he will be working his way through areas as stealthily as possible, trying not to get spotted because he cannot fight back. They reiterate that here by saying that you won't be directly taking on enemies, instead you'll be relying on scavenged items, so just trinkets and scrap that you'll find around, and maybe rocks to throw. Environmental hazards, so you'll be able to drop traps hopefully on orcs, and newfound friends to help because he will be able to use some of the abilities of those allies. It seems like you won't be able to be playing directly with these, so maybe you find an elven friend who's going to help you out for a mission. It doesn't seem like you'll then switch over to play from his point of view, but maybe you can direct him and choose who you want him to fire at. They're not hiding from the fact that you will meet other people from the Lord of the Rings universe, however they're not actually being specific about it yet, because the timeline of the narrative is set before Lord of the Rings actually happens, and these characters will mostly play smaller roles in the story, but some of them will play very significant, and I do not know what that means yet. Maybe we'll get to see Bilbo, but that's unlikely because Bilbo will already have the ring and he'll be at the Shire, and Gollum will be trying to hunt him down, and it would be quite weird to suddenly find out that they already had an interaction between The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. They also talked about the narrative gameplay, and they said that, quote, "The decisions you make will affect the way the game feels. You can either play as Smeagol or as Gollum as the dominant persona, and that can influence animations, soundscapes, certain gameplay situations, and in-game dialogue." The dialogue is not surprising at all. If you just look at something like Telltale, where you're given 4 options of what you do to reply to someone in a conversation, it'll be something like that where you get 2 options of Smeagol, 2 options of Gollum. Maybe if you choose more Gollum throughout the narrative, they will then give you 3 choices of Gollum and only 1 of Smeagol, or maybe if you become so far ingrained in that Gollum character, all 4 will be darker choices. The gameplay situations are very interesting as well. If you look at the example image, it says that the 2 options for Gollum are calm down or shh, and the 2 Smeagol options are to say "don't hurt us" or "not our hands," which kind of seems like Smeagol would be owning up to the fact that he's hiding if he hasn't been found yet, and so that will be him coming out and trying to surrender to an orc, whereas the Gollum choice will be staying quiet and maybe staying out of combat as well, so you'll be able to choose how your encounters go through your narrative and dialogue choices. They also talk about the source material because it is still set in the same universe as the books, and as you will probably already know, Gollum's fate is already determined by the books. We know how it ends for him, but your decisions, they say, will have big effects for some NPCs in the game, which is quite interesting, because you're not going to be able to do any world-altering or lore-altering choices. You're not going to be able to make such a huge impact on the game because we already have a defined starting and end point for Gollum. They just have a whole lot in the middle that they can play around with. It is described as a sort of morality system, but it's a bit more twisted than most other games. It's not as simple as choose Smeagol to be good and choose Gollum to be evil, and they describe it as manoeuvring a truck with 2 flat tyres and trying not to drive it off a cliff. So to try and simplify that, there is a clear direction Gollum is going, and so you're going to have to do a lot to take him off track, but they will have carefully crafted a narrative that they will expect you to complete. And this is not an open world game. The game is structured for the most part in sets of levels and hubs, which I would actually describe as similar to Marvel's Avengers. You won't have a Chimera, you won't have a helicarrier where you choose to go out on your missions, but each one you load into is a smaller subsection rather than something like Gotham Knights, where you have the entirety of Gotham to explore. So it is more linear, but you will be able to find secret passages or information or scheme your way into otherwise restricted areas. There are some levels that are completely open in all 3 dimensions and can be explored freely because Gollum is of course great at climbing, but there are also alternative routes that players can take where you could either sneak around some guards or take a risky parkour route from dangerous heights to pass the next segment, which sounds great. It is always good to give you a choice on how you want to play the section, even if it is just in a smaller hub world. Verticality is said to play a big role in the levels, and of course, as I said, Gollum can climb really well, so it won't be your most basic stealth game you could possibly have, where you're just creeping from cover to cover, because Gollum will hopefully, in my ideal game, be able to scale most, if not all, walls if they're not protected with barriers or spikes, and maybe some enemies will see him on the walls so you can't just cheat your way across the ceiling, but the idea of being able to work your way round the hub much more freely is an amazing idea. And this game is based on the original book license rather than the Peter Jackson movies, and while the source material is mostly the same, this world and this game is following the descriptions and the influences of the book. They understand that a lot of people will have just seen the movies, so they're not going to make it impossible for you to understand if you haven't seen the books, but luckily there isn't a massive difference between the 2 forms of media, so you won't feel out of place if you've only seen the movies. So some iconic shapes, such as Sauron's Dark Tower, they're still going to look like a tower and not a broad fortress, even though the books would allow that to be the case. So finally, some information on the story, and as I mentioned, it will be set in the unexplored time period before you meet Gollum in The Lord of the Rings, and we start our story parallel to the first book, when Frodo is still in the Shire and knows nothing about absolutely anything. Gollum at the time ventures to Mordor and is still desperately looking for Bilbo Baggins and the ring. However, he gets caught by Sauron's servants, and that's basically where the story starts. So you would assume, as they mentioned earlier about some prisons in the Dark Tower, that your first mission will be escaping from said prisons, and then maybe the story will open up a lot more. They are quite vague about Gollum's overall goal in the game because it is quite complicated. So while Gollum wants to escape his captors and retake the ring, they say that the Smeagol side will cause troubles and distractions and open up new situations that they aren't able to talk about yet. And finally, you may have noticed the design of Gollum is not identical to the Andy Serkis version that we see in the films. That is an art choice, that's not just a mistake. They've decided to make him more relatable, as players will have to slip into his skin and see everything from his point of view for the whole game, and that's why their Gollum looks less creepy and has a bit more hair than the movie version. And that is all the information that we have been given on the Lord of the Rings Gollum game. It will be coming out on the next generation of consoles, so the PC, the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X, and it will be coming out in 2021. We don't have a quarter of 2021 that we can be expecting it in, but it'll be interesting to find out when we do get some more information, and hopefully some actual gameplay with it, because all we got was some images from gameplay, which is quite interesting, and then a cinematic trailer which shows us absolutely nothing except that Mount Doom is still there. So thank you for watching this video, leave a like if you did enjoy, and I'll be covering Lord of the Rings Gollum as more information comes out, although that is unlikely to be for a while now. I just thought I'd get the first proper information video out so you guys know what to expect from the future. It is now a week until the launch of Marvel's Avengers, and I will be doing a giveaway of 2 copies of that game. It is not console specific. If you win, I will ask which platform is your preferred one, and I'll be doing a walkthrough of the game's campaign as soon as it launches. So thank you for watching this video, and hopefully I will see you next time.